Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling something many of us have probably heard or maybe even struggled with. This whole idea of how to raise kids, resilient, well-adjusted kids.
Right, without sort of spoiling them on one hand or maybe depriving them on the other.
Exactly. And there's this traditional idea, you hear it in some cultures, raise boys frugally, raise girls lavishly. We're going to look at that, but maybe challenge it a bit.
We are. We're going to explore a concept called intelligent upbringing, or 一环境. It comes from Chu Mai-Ten's book, What Working Moms Learn.
Okay, intelligent upbringing. Sounds intriguing.
It really is. It's a strategic way of thinking about parenting.
So for this deep dive, we're pulling from her book, looking at her insights. And our goal really is to figure out how to provide the right resources, but at the right time.
Precisely. It's about timing and appropriateness for development, aiming for what she calls inner richness and deep contentment, not just surface stuff.
And we'll touch on things like, well, the implications for parents, too.
Yes.
Right, especially working moms.
Absolutely. Her own story is woven into this. And we'll even look at a sociological framework and maybe a slightly surprising take on the cost of raising kids.
Okay, sounds good. Let's dive in. First, that traditional saying, Korea, sons raised poor, daughters raised rich. Let's unpack that a little. It's been around a while.
It has, and it's often debated. But Chermachen's take is quite different. She fundamentally disagrees that the distinction should be based on gender.
Okay, so if not gender, then what?
It's about the child's stage of growth. That's the key determinant for her. She redefines the terms, too. The poor upbringing isn't about actual poverty or deprivation.
Right.
It's more about living a simple, unpretentious life, fostering core values.
And the rich upbringing, not just about spoiling them with money.
Definitely not. For her, it means cultivating the ability to appreciate refined culture, things like art, music, literature, a different kind of wealth.
So she brings these together.
Yes, into intelligent upbringing. The core idea is kind of summed up in this phrase, PLS.
Which means?
Roughly. Can be insufficient, can be abundant. It sounds a bit contradictory, but it means providing just enough for each stage. Sometimes that might mean holding back, other times providing more, but always focused on that inner richness, not just the external stuff.
Okay, that makes sense. It's strategic. So let's talk stages. How does this intelligent upbringing apply to, say, young kids, elementary school age? She talks about for this period.
Yes, precisely. And again, it's crucial to remember this isn't about making kids feel deprived. It's the opposite, really.
How so?
It's about building this deep internal sense of security, contentment, through simplicity, which, kind of runs counter to our very consumerist culture sometimes.
It really does. So what does that simplicity look like day to day?
Well, she gives some great examples. Think about food. Simple, nutritious, home-cooked meals are the focus. Or maybe enjoying local street food, night markets.
Right.
Real-life stuff, not necessarily fancy restaurants all the time.
Oh.
Clothes. Quality's good, but they don't need to be expensive brands, just functional, comfortable.
Right. Sensible.
And activities. Maybe playing at the local park more often than heading to the big, flashy amusement center or department store. Spending time together in simple ways.
The core thing seems to be the parents being there. That consistent, loving presence.
That's exactly it. That companionship in the everyday routines. That's the real richness in this stage, according to Chu Mai-Chen.
Because that builds, what did you call it, that inner security.
Yes.
Yeah.
That sense of security, of groundedness, and spiritual fulfillment or inner richness. These are the foundational assets she believes this poor upbringing stage provides.
And these last a lifetime, regardless of later wealth.
That's the argument. It's an investment in their internal world, their core being. Much more durable than, say, a fancy toy.
Yeah, that resonates. She shares an anecdote about that, doesn't she, the Japanese author?
Ah, yes, Lily Frankie. From his autobiography, Tokyo Tower, he wrote about growing up with his single, working mother, very modest circumstances, financially speaking. But his mother was so meticulous, preparing meals, choosing his clothes with care, just present. And he describes himself as feeling full.
Spiritually fulfilled, never feeling deprived. Wow.
It's powerful, isn't it? Shows how parental effort and presence can create this profound sense of well-being, totally separate from material wealth. Chu Mai-Chen even mentions her own mother.
Right, who cooked all the time.
Yeah, rarely ate out. And that instilled in Chu Mai-Chen herself a real appreciation for home cooking, a balanced view. It all ties back to building that internal wealth through simple, consistent love and care.
Okay, so that's the poor upbringing for childhood, focused on security, presence, simplicity. What about later, when kids get older, maybe university age, the focus shifts to rich upbringing?
It does. But again, we need to be clear about what kind of rich we're talking about here.
Not fancy cars and shopping sprees, I gather.
Haha, no, not primarily. This, Sia, is about cultivating an appreciation for refined culture.
Refined culture, like what specifically?
Things like literature, music, art, architecture, broadening their horizons intellectually and aesthetically, helping them engage with the world on a deeper level.
Okay, I get the idea of broadening horizons. But what's the practical payoff? I mean, how does appreciating art help you, get a job or navigate adult life? Some parents might feel it's a bit of a luxury.
That's a fair question. Chiomation sees real, tangible benefits. She says it increases their sensitivity, refines their character or temperament,
Okay.
and importantly, it gives them rich topics for conversation. This helps them showcase their unique personality, their depth in social and professional settings. It makes them more interesting, more adaptable people.
So it builds social and intellectual flexibility.
Exactly. And this connects directly to sociological ideas, like Pierre Bourdieu's concept of different types of capital.
Ah, right. Not just economic capital, money.
Correct. Bourdieu talked about social capital, your networks, connections, and crucially here, cultural capital.
Which is?
Your knowledge, your skills, your tastes. Things like education, language ability, that appreciation for art or music we talked about. That's cultural capital.
Okay. So the rich upbringing stage is about actively investing in their cultural capital.
Precisely. Chiomation calls guiding kids towards good books and art the best investment because it builds that cultural capital, leads to that deeper, that inner richness.
And it helps them develop a kind of elegance.
Yes, an outward but understated elegance, one that isn't easily swayed by superficial trends or just chasing money. It grounds them in deeper values.
It sounds like it teaches discernment.
That's a great way to put it. Discernment, appreciation, and a sense of self derived from something more than just possessions.
Okay, let's bring this down to earth again. How does this balance play out in everyday life? You mentioned food earlier.
Right. Chiomation shares her own approach. During childhood, it was mostly simple home meals, local food, night markets, that simplicity. But then, when her kids were in university, the statehood, she'd occasionally take them to, a nice restaurant for a celebration, fine dining.
Ah, interesting. So exposing them to both ends of the spectrum.
Exactly. And the goal wasn't just indulgence, it was to, broaden their horizons. But more than that, it was to cultivate
equanimity. A balanced perspective.
Yes, a balanced view towards external dining and, by extension, other luxuries. She wanted them to be able to,
To appreciate the gourmet meal, but also cherish the simple home cooking.
Precisely. To not be overly impressed by luxury, nor to look down on simplicity. To feel comfortable and appreciative in both settings.
That really seems central to this whole intelligent upbringing idea. It's about adaptability and appreciation.
It really is. True richness, in this view, isn't constant luxury. It's about finding value and contentment across the whole range of human experience. Being grounded.
Okay, but let's talk brass tacks. Money. Raising kids is expensive. How does this philosophy grapple with the, frankly, enormous cost?
No, you're right. It's a huge factor. Chiomation actually surveyed mothers in her book club.
The Happy Financial Women's Book Club.
That's the one. About 500 mothers in Taiwan. She asked them, estimate the cost, raising one child until they're independent.
And the number was?
Around 5 million new Taiwan dollars. NT $5 million.
Wow. That's, roughly $160,000 per child?
Yeah, it's a staggering amount. She even jokes about herself having 3 kids in university, feeling like a multimillionaire who spent tens of millions.
You definitely feel the weight of that.
Yeah.
So given that huge cost, what does intelligent upbringing really tell us? Does it make it cheaper?
Not necessarily cheaper in total dollars, perhaps. But it emphasizes strategic spending. It highlights that while, yes, economic capital is obviously essential.
You need money.
You do. But the way you allocate resources, including your time, your attention, and your money, towards that cultural and spiritual enrichment might give you and your child a better return in terms of overall well-being.
So it's not just about the amount, but the wisdom of the investment, quality over quantity.
Exactly. It's about investing intentionally in their holistic development, not just throwing money at things.
Okay, now let's shift focus slightly to the author herself, Jumation. Her personal journey is a big part of the book, What Working Moms Learn.
It is. Her background is really relevant. She was a successful magazine editor, quite high-powered,
All right.
and then she chose to step away from that career. Became a stay-at-home mom for 12 years to raise her 3 children. A major shift from what she calls the work system to the care system.
12 years is a long time out of that kind of career.
It is. And through that time, she developed this deep appreciation for the value of just being present, of companionship. She says that time spent together becomes the child's happiness asset.
A lovely way to put it. But her story doesn't end there, does it? She went back to work eventually.
She did. As her children got older, she felt a need to re-engage with the world outside the home. She talks about feeling financially dependent and also, quite movingly, feeling like she'd become a person without her own stories, separate from her role as a mother.
That's relatable for many parents, I imagine.
I think so. And this led her to a really powerful message, particularly for mothers, but really for any parent who has dedicated years to caregiving.
Which is?
This ko imapuche, use the same passion you poured into raising your children to cultivate yourself, to restart the second half of your life.
Wow, that's empowering.
It is. And she reflects on how that period of intense caregiving changed her. She says, even if others saw her as maybe, an ordinary, plainly dressed, maybe uninteresting middle-aged woman.
Okay.
Internally, she felt transformed.
Ah.
Outside on, as a person, in terms of her substance, her essence, she felt she'd become a better person.
That's profound. It suggests that the act of caregiving itself, even with its sacrifices, is deeply enriching.
It absolutely does. It raises the question, doesn't it? How does that deep devotion, that service and presence, nurture the caregiver? It's a different kind of growth, an internal refinement, perhaps.
A different kind of richness.
Exactly. An internal wealth built through connection and care, regardless of external validation.
So wrapping this up, this dive into intelligent upbringing really gives us a lot to think about. It's about being strategic, tailoring the approach, that poor upbringing, simplicity early on, the rich upbringing, cultural exposure later.
Right? Always prioritizing that inner richness, that contentment, understanding capital beyond just money, cultural, social, and recognizing the value of the parent's own journey, their self-cultivation.
It's a very holistic view.
It is. So maybe the final thought for you, our listeners, is this. We invest so much financially, emotionally, personally in raising our children. How might embracing these ideas of intelligent upbringing, prioritizing deep connection, balancing cultural and material wealth, how might that change how we define success?
For both ourselves and our kids, especially in a world that's often so focused on just the external stuff, the achievements you can list.
Exactly. Something to ponder. We hope this deep dive has given you some fresh perspectives on navigating the wonderful, complex journey of parenting and maybe even your own personal growth alongside it.